earliest thing I can remember wanting to do was wanting to be a bodybuilder. I think
Bodybuilder?
Oh,
How old were you wanted to be a bodybuilder?
honestly, this is
I
like high school.
Welcome to Journey of the Unordinary, a podcast where we carry out intimate conversations with guests to discover their journeys to where they are today. We'll dive into where they grew up, what are some pivotal moments in their journey, and how they approach life in general. I'm Jackie, a Chinese-born New York City living girl who's perpetually on a hunt for childhood hometown food from Kunming.
and I'm Chuxing, a Chinese-born Sydney living girl who loves exploring, making meaningful connections, and capturing moments in life. In this season, we bring you 10 episodes of 10 guests, centered around tech and data. Join us now to uncover the unique path of these beautiful, unordinary people. Find a piece of yourself in their stories, and let the adventure inspire your own.
Hi everyone, welcome to our pilot episode. We're happy to have Andrew here today as our pilot episode guest. Yay!
Yay!
All right, a little bit more background about our guest Andrew. He is doing developer relations at Dune, a community data platform in the context of blockchain or Web3. I work with Andrew on the same go-to-market team at Dune as a dev also. You will hear more about how Choosing and I got to know him more in the episode itself. How do we know Andrew?
Yeah, so I think Jackie and I, we both found out Andrew on Twitter and through our discovery exploration into crypto data. So he is our very first teacher and also our pilot program guest. So Andrew has a special position in both of our hearts. And let's welcome Andrew.
Welcome.
Excited to be here. It feels weird saying I'm a teacher after we've known each other for like so long, but
Yeah.
First, the first person that led us through the journey of the
sure.
Web3 data.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, totally.
All right. So we'll start with what's your journey to where you are now? Because this podcast is all about the journey to where you are now.
Sure. Yeah. Where do we want to start? Do we want to
Where
start from now back to the past? Do we want to start all the way from the past to the future? Do we have a preference?
Ooh, I think we can start from past to now, and then
Okay.
we can lead up to the future.
All right. All right. We'll leave my present as a mystery to people. Yeah. Well, I guess there's always like the 3 minute, 30 minute, and then like 30-day version of things. But the 3 minute history of myself. Parents immigrated from Shanghai. Was born outside of Ohio, Columbus, Ohio. I don't remember anything about Columbus besides going to like I think was like a Christian preschool where they made you like break bread and dip it in wine or grape juice at the time. Um, Moved to outside of Chicago when I was 3. Went to school there until 8 years old, 9 years old. This place called Hinsdale. I was like basically the only Asian there, and then moved to LA when I was 9 and became everyone around me was Asian. I was like, there was almost no one that wasn't Asian where I went to school. Um, yeah, it's outside of LA called Palos Verdes or Redondo Beach area. Um, and then got sick of California by the end of high school. Moved to New York. Had a lot more fun in New York. Still live in New York. Um, Went to school at NYU, which is why I moved to New York. Um, and yeah, here I am. That's a location history. Grew up as an only child with one dog, a little Shih Tzu named Lychee.
Lychee.
And now I have a beagle of my own called Mochi. Um,
Oh,
I think
it's
if I have a
definitely
third,
name rhymes.
yeah, if I have a third dog, it's supposed
Yeah.
to be called Kimchi, is what I've told myself.
Oh,
Um,
that's
Good.
cute.
but
When are they coming?
I mean, whenever Mochi dies.
Oh,
Okay, that's a bit.
oh
I
my
love
God,
my
Andrew
dog.
just sound like me.
She's like 9 years old.
Oh,
She still has like 6 years, so 6, 7 years. So it'll be a while.
I'm curious. Like you said that you went from like nobody was Asian around you to everybody was Asian around you.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it had some impact in you today and some like choices you've made, maybe?
Hmm. I mean, it definitely had an impact when I moved, I would say. I mean, like, I'd like didn't know what like anime was or like manga or any of that stuff until like
Mm.
I moved here. So like until sixth, seventh grade, like everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I grew up watching Studio Ghibli," and I was like, "I grew up watching Disney. What the hell is Studio Ghibli?" Like I didn't have boba until like seventh or eighth grade. Like the first
Mm.
time I had boba, I was like, "What the hell is this? Why does anyone like this?" Like I had one
Exactly.
sip and spit it out and threw it away.
Do you like
Um,
this now?
I mean, obviously, I like it now. But I mean, it's definitely interesting. It's like a bunch of those cultural elements, like basically were just introduced to me in middle school when like a lot of my peers around me grew up with that.
Hmm.
Does that actually affect any of my decisions? I don't really know. I can't think of a decision. Like, obviously, you don't really make that many decisions in middle school, so like, I
Mm.
don't think it really affected me that much. Um, like at least the cultural aspect of it. It probably the only thing it made me want to do is like, oh, I've been to like two major cities like Chicago and LA. I want to go and check out another
Mm.
one, New York. But
Mm-mm.
that had nothing to do with me being the only Asian kid or like
Mm.
surrounded by Asians or
Right. Is that I guess there will be more reasons that you decided to move to New York, right? Like, can you kind of elaborate a little bit other than New York being another city? Like, what else did you like
Yeah.
think back then?
I mean, it was actually a pretty simple choice. One was I wanted to just get away from my parents, and my parents also wanted me to go away for like as much as we love each other. We were like, all right, I was a tough kid. Like in terms of like I gave them a tough time. Um,
Oh.
and also like I literally wrote on my college application, I was like, I want to be next to Chinatown so I can eat a ton of good food. Um, so like food and also like basically independence from family were like two of the big reasons I wanted to go to New York. Um,
Mm.
I like did not give a shit about like career or anything else at the time like that. I feel like a
Wow.
lot of people go to NYU because they're like, oh yeah, I want to be close to like all these companies for internships and whatnot. Like I think that played a role
Mm-hmm.
later on, but like
Mm-hmm.
I had no impact on me going wanting to go.
Wow.
Mm.
But it's also very interesting that back then you were only thinking about I want to get close to Chinatown.
Oh yeah, I love Chinese food. And I was like, yeah, I mean, food, even now, food is a big motivator for me. So some things
Yeah.
haven't, like some things don't change.
Mm. Yeah,
Yeah, in the
totally.
genes, in
Oh.
the family.
Yeah.
uh, you mentioned like something about kind of you were a difficult child. It's
Hmm.
I in the beginning I'm like, oh, it's like hard to imagine that, but I'm like, oh, I can see that because I feel like you're also like a very free spirit. So I'm curious, like when you were younger, like what were you like, maybe middle school or high school, and like what were
Hmm.
you like naturally good at, or maybe things that you might have struggled, like before we all grew up and became adults.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think again, some things don't change. I think I'm only good at the things that I actually want to do. If I don't want to do something, I am absolutely terrible at it, and it will not get done. I think I still say the same thing at work. It's like the first thing I tell any manager I have is I'm like, hey, there are things I want to do, and I'll do a really good job on them. If there's something I don't want to do, like you're gonna wish you never assigned it to me.
Mm.
So as you can imagine, I did not like doing homework. I did not like going to school. Um,
Mm,
so like I would like I was still a good student by most standards in terms of like took like 12 or 13 AP classes, got mostly A's and like B's, B pluses. But like I skipped school like 20-30% of the time. Like I think Jackie knows this, but like the vice principal had to like send a letter home being like, hey, if he misses any more school, we're gonna have to expel him. But
Oh.
I was still like, I would just show up to school to take tests, and that's it. And like,
Hmm.
would skip most homework assignments unless I needed it to like keep like an A minus or something. So as an only child in an Asian household, you can imagine that my parents don't love that.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
on top of also, I really liked video games, so it was
Hmm.
like
Like, no,
very
no, I'm
classic.
low. Sorry, you're low key a genius. No need to go to school. I just ace all the tests.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, again, I still have some of these personality traits today. I would say like there are some things that I skip just because I'm like I don't think it's worth my time.
Hmm.
But I try to be
Yeah.
more mindful of it now. And also my parents are or parents, managers, whoever is like they're much more understanding now. So,
Yeah, totally. I have a question. I have a follow-up question.
yeah.
Um, how do you know like what you like or dislike certain things? I think I don't know,
Mm,
sometimes for me, especially when I was like growing up in China, I think you just kind of be forced into kind of a system and maybe
that's
don't
true.
even think about, oh, what I like or dislike until you grow up. So I want to know like how you discover that. Like how did you start developing your free spirit even back then as a kid?
I mean, I think again, that's hard. I feel like that's something I still try to figure out. Like how much of what
Mm,
I like is because I get validation from it versus like fulfillment from it. I think that's pretty
mm,
hard. Like even the stuff I do now with like data and web3, I'm like, how much of it am I doing because I know that I have a group of people who like validate my work on it, and are supportive of my
mm,
work. Um,
mm,
I don't know. Like same thing back then. One of the few things I was good at is I was good at playing this board game Weiqi or like Go
mhm,
in English. The Black and White
Oh,
Stones. Um, and like but that was something where it's like, oh yeah, I maybe liked it because I was good at it. Um, and like obviously I think once you're good at something, you meet people who are supportive of you and like try
mm,
to push you further. And there's always these goals like competitions and awards and like scholarships and stuff that they put in front of you. Um, again, how much did I like Go versus just getting those achievements and whatnot? I don't
right.
know. I think that still affects me today, but yeah, if I had to choose things I initially like board games was probably one of the bigger ones back then. Um,
Mm,
maybe writing to an extent as well. Like I used to
mm,
really like in middle school, I wanted to like write a book. Um, but like the people
wow.
back then who told me I was good at writing was like back then you're good at writing if you can write really long things. Like if you can write 20 pages, people are like, wow, that's really impressive. And then like
Mm,
now if someone at work sends a 20-page document, people are
yeah.
like, dude, what the hell are you doing? No one wants to read 20 pages, so like writing also changes over time. But when I was growing up, I think I liked writing a
Mm,
lot because people told me I was good at it. Now I think I'm better at writing than I was back then. But hopefully, at least for that, I think I do that more because I like it versus validation. But
mm,
we'll see what me in 10 years says.
yeah. Oh, that also makes me wonder as a kid, what did you want to do when you grow up?
Ah,
It's probably different from what you're doing right now,
oh
right?
yeah, big difference. God, let me think. Earliest thing I can remember wanting to do was wanting to be a bodybuilder. I think like
Bodybuilder?
Oh,
How old were you wanted to be a bodybuilder?
honestly, this is like high school. I was
Okay.
like
I was thinking more
watch
like middle school or something. They ask you, "What do you want to be?" I want to be an astronaut.
Oh, no, well, yeah, I think I like realistic. I think I told my mom I was like, oh, I want to go study nutrition and then maybe be
Mm.
like a bodybuilder or something.
oh.
And my mom was like, no way. um, I mean, yeah, but at that time I was watching like a lot of like Arnold Schwarzenegger and like those kinds of figures. Um, so just and like going to the gym a lot back then. Like I was like 200 something pounds back then. Like now, right now, I'm like maybe 180. But back then, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get big, big.
Oh.
um, so that's the first thing I remember, like actually wanting to do. Um, after that, like my dad was a banker, so I just thought like more realistically, like, oh yeah, I'll study finance, math, econ, whatever, and just go do banking because it makes money. And like my dad
Mm.
already has connections in it, nepotism and whatnot. I could probably
No.
get somewhere with it nicely. So was that a like, oh, this is what I want to do? I don't know, but it was like, all right, that's basically maybe junior year of high school of like, okay, yeah, this is realistic. So
Mm.
Would you say that where you are now today would surprise you 10, 15 years ago?
probably. I mean, well, 15 years ago. How old was
Okay, maybe 10, 10.
I?
We'll
10
settle on
years ago.
10.
Um, would it have surprised me? I mean, I feel like if you told 10 years ago me what I do now, probably wouldn't get it.
Mm.
Um, like I don't even know what I would tell him. Be like, "Oh yeah, like you teach data now in this crypto thing. It's like Bitcoin but not really Bitcoin." I feel like I'd be like, "Okay, like are you
Wait,
still
did
going
you
to the
know what
gym?"
Bitcoin is like back
Back
then?
then? No.
Yeah.
God no. I
Okay.
I
Okay.
didn't pay attention to jack shit back. Like you see all these kids who are like, "Oh yeah, they were like hacking and building things in high school." I was like, "No, I was
Mm.
going to the beach, like getting rejected by girls, going to work out and like eating." Like I was like a very normal, well, not that the people who spend time just coding in high school are not normal, but I was more on the normal side back then.
Mm.
So I don't think he would have much to say about what I do now. Like it wouldn't I
Mm.
wouldn't be like, "Oh yeah, I'm very proud of you" or something. So.
Mm. Mm, mm,
Oh,
mm.
you wouldn't. The younger Andrew wouldn't say that. Like the younger Andrew would be
Probably
like, "Oh,
probably
how come?
not.
Why aren't you a bodybuilder yet?"
Yeah, like you're not a build a bodybuilder, you haven't won the lottery yet, and you're not like a billionaire CEO at 26. Like what are you doing? So
Mm. So what made you kind of you like did the you tried to do banking, but then now you're teaching data in crypto.
Mm.
right,
Like what
right.
happened in between?
Yeah, what happened? I was disillusioned is what happened. I mean, I think like going to college, obviously when you're at NYU, you talk to a lot of Sternies, which is like NYU Stern students. Everyone wants
Mm.
to be like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, or like Goldman, JP Morgan, um, whatever those names. So like I started at KPMG for a few years and then went to Barclays for a few years. Like it was fun. Like I complain about those days a lot. But it was still fun just living like a typical corporate life, going to like these fancy like dinners and whatnot. And like kind of playing the status game of sorts of like, oh yeah, like I'll do this for
Mm.
2 years, I'll become like AVP, and then maybe like do a few projects on the side in the community and slowly become a VP and I don't know, move on from there. Like that was very much like yeah, the 5 year plan makes a lot of sense. Um
Mm.
I think honestly I think about it a lot. I'm like, all right, if COVID never happened, would I still have left finance? Um Probably. I think the timeline would have been different. Just because like because of COVID, I had a lot more time to meet other people who weren't at the company. But what was the original question? How did I leave? How did I
Yeah,
leave
like
that world?
how did you end up
Yeah.
where you are right
Right.
now, like in between banking and like crypto,
Yeah.
teaching crypto data?
Right.
Because you were like
Right.
doing things and then for the bank, but then now you're like I feel like the verb is very much different. Like you when you're like an analyst or something, you're analyzing or something, but then I feel like that now the main verb is teaching.
Mm. Yeah, that's fair. Well, okay. So I mean, I was already. If we zoom in just on that, I was already teaching back even when I was at Barclays. Like I learned Python while I was at Barclays and like taught I think 600 people internally how to use Python in like an 8 week course or something like that. I was already having fun writing on Medium, doing like at that time like sustainable finance analysis. So like analyzing every sustainable development goal or analyzing like sea level rise or whatnot and like putting it on towards data science. So I think I already had like the muscle of teaching and sharing with people and then like wanting to build with some community.
Mm,
But like most people in finance don't really care about the tech stuff much. Like they look at data science stuff and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool, but that just belongs to the tech world. I'm never going to actually use that in my work. I just want to play with my silly little forecasting models and do relationship stuff." And at that time, I was like, "No, the tech stuff matters more. Um,
mhm,
you don't need this relationship stuff to like really get shit done. All you guys are doing are
Mm,
arguing over like these tiny bits of like covenants, basically, which is like the
yeah.
rules around like lending and whatnot.
Mm,
And I thought it was pretty useless. So COVID hit, I had time to do some hackathons with ETH Global, meet people in the space like Linda Shee, Tramp Van Epps, Austin Griffith, who are like educators and leaders in the space today. And I was like, oh, I can build whatever I want in crypto. And there's a community here that's like a lot more receptive to like when I share
mhm,
things or ask things. So that got me into crypto, and I feel like crypto is just a space where like teaching and contributing continuously like just gets you further and further in terms
mhm,
of like both career and meeting people. Um, so I've just kept doing it. I still do a lot of like analytics work on the side, but yeah, my main job is teaching. So that was the main shift. It was pretty gradual. There was not like a single moment where I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go teach." Because even when I joined
mm,
crypto, it was like first at Consensus as like a business analyst doing consulting, and then at Mir being like a data engineer. Before I was like,
mm,
"Yeah, I hate doing engineering." Um,
hmm.
so yeah.
yeah. Oh, I'm curious. Is teaching the part that um I guess since when did you kind of develop this? Because it sounds like it's something that happened during banking time, but I wonder if that's also
Mm,
something comes natural out of you even when you were younger.
yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a fair question. Earliest thing I taught was Go back in high school. So like I got good at Go, was like competing nationally, and then starting like sophomore year of high school, I went to the library and taught Go like 3 hours a weekend, like
Mm,
10 a.m. to 1 p.m. or something like that, or like 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. I don't remember actually. And I taught Go every weekend for 3 years. And like
mm.
my students were like everything from 5 years old to like I had an 85-year-old
Wow.
who came in because it was all free. Just whoever wanted to come in and learn. I taught in like the
Mm.
attic of the Malaga Cove Library. So I think back
I'm
then
gonna look that up.
yeah. I like built the muscle for teaching people of different ages, like a pretty technical game. Um,
Mm.
and then in college, teaching took the form more of just mentorship. So I always tried to mentor students who were either like trying to apply to college or like maybe a year or two younger than me in college, going through like some recruiting process or something.
Mm.
So I think that's always just been a muscle I've built.
Mhm.
It feels
Um,
Mm.
like very innate. You just like wanted to do it, and then you just did it. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. I can't. I honestly, at this point, I probably should have written this down more. I don't really remember what my driver was for any of it.
Mm.
Back,
But
I guess, 10,
yeah.
12 years ago. Um,
I wonder if there's any kind of satisfaction that also comes out of it. Probably not something that you think about it, but maybe it's something subconscious, I guess.
mm, I mean, that gets back to the validation thing of
Yeah.
like it is
Yeah.
validating to see
Yeah.
someone learn, and
Mm.
also like the respect that comes with it. I can't just say, "Oh yeah, I like teaching just altruistically because of teaching." Um, yeah, it's obviously a mix of things, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it.
I want to like follow up on like the engineering and the tech side because you were like talking about
Mm.
you like tech is really important, but then you were like, I really don't want to do
Ah,
engineering.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
how do we put two and two together? Like get there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done a full 360 on the like going into banking, which is relationship driven, thinking relationships are dumb, and going into engineering. thinking you can just solve all your problems with engineering and realizing, oh shit, you know what? Engineering is not where it gets done. You have to go back to the relationship side to get it done. Which is why now I'm more in like marketing and sales, having done like a basically a full loop and been
Wow.
like, ah, okay, I understand why banking is relationship driven and not tech
Mm,
driven.
mm,
Why I don't like engineering as much. I mean, there's a couple reasons. One is just like I hate keeping up with all these different frameworks. Like I think whether it's data engineering, front end engineering, back end, or like whatever, like the frameworks just keep changing. And you have like you're basically in a constant state of migration. Like we see this with Dune. Like you're like
oh.
obviously Dune takes it to the limit in terms of like we're a data platform and we've migrated languages like 3 times.
Mm,
But like that happens like that like people see that only because like our users have to deal with it, you know? But like I think no matter what company you're at, they're constantly switching frameworks and like migrating this, migrating that, and like this like and you have to maintain things so that they don't break. And I'm like, all right, that's a type of systems thinking that I don't particularly enjoy. Um,
mm,
and like, I don't think I'm particularly good at it either. I think there are people who are much better at that kind of like systems thinking that probably
Mm,
enjoy
mhm,
engineering a lot more.
mm,
I think I enjoy like the abstract of relationships a lot more. It's just more tangible for me to think about like, oh, who's working on XYZ here, there, wherever, what stage are they probably in their development there, like knowing when to reach out to them for this. And like tech and engineering is like a small part of like being able to demo things or talk things with them. That I enjoy, but not the constant building out a system, updating the system, maintaining the system kind of thing.
mm.
I don't fully enjoy that.
Yeah. Since you go through kind of a full cycle of career trajectory,
Mm.
what do you think about? I think that's probably a question for many people as well, but what do you think about going broad in terms of different spectrums, but also going versus going deep?
Yeah. Um Yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten this question a lot. I think the main thing I'll say, like more important than like what your job role is just like if your early career, you should try to switch companies at least a few times. Like I think you learn more about like because I think every time you switch a company, your role somewhat shifts. Even if you're an engineer, you might end up doing more like product and design and like relationship work, depending on size of the startup and whatnot. I think the worst thing you can do personally, and I know people disagree, but like switch places you work every year or two, you know, especially if you're starting your career. You're going to learn a lot more from that than just like trying to switch roles or something internally. That's like first piece of advice, but like if you aren't willing to completely switch companies, because I also get it's a lot to like build up relationships inside a company and then let them go when you move companies. I know that's hard. In that case, yes, you should try and lateral within your company every year or two. It's also great for your compensation. So
Uh, so I guess maybe doing like an outlook in the future. What do you want to get done by the end of the year, and maybe a 3 to 6 month projection. I won't even go in like years term.
yeah, yeah,
No,
that's fair. Um, I have stopped looking at anything more than 6 months. So I think in the past, I looked out more 3, 5 years of like, oh yeah, I want to buy a house in like 2 years, or um, maybe like move back home and get married at 30. I think I've stopped thinking about those things for the most part. Um, I think the only thing in my mind is like, all right, in 6 months, do I want to have started my own company or not? I think that's really the only thing I kind of think about in terms of like things that I need to prepare for. Cause I kind of view it as like everything else in my life. Like, if I really want to move somewhere, like I'm just going to do it as soon as possible, you know? Or like if I want to switch jobs, I'm just going to do it as soon as possible. Or like whatever it is. If I want like relationship stuff or whatever else. I'm just like, yeah, I'll do it. Like, there's no point in waiting or planning on it for me.
Hmm.
I think like starting a company is the only thing where I'm like, okay, I probably need at least like 4 or 5 months leeway of thinking of like, all right, gotta go and like figure out where do I want to go find a co-founder, test different ideas, like I think there's a lot more there. But yeah, I'm very much just like go with the flow of it, and every month is like a
Hmm.
different flavor. So
What made you change from thinking 3, 5 years to 6 months?
hmm, a good question. I think that largely depends on who I've spent time with. Like, I think the people I spent time with in the past were all big planners. I mean, like in college, I think like everyone is kind of a planner of like, oh yeah, we've got like, we're going to go work at a rotational program for 2 years, and then we're going to go do an MBA for a year, and then we're going to go and like take some associate role somewhere and get a house a year or two after. Like, I think in
Hmm.
college you're just surrounded by people like that for the most part. I think as I've moved away from those circles, my friends now are much more like they just live life and go about things. Like, especially in this industry, it's like most people I know at least don't go planning out a long period of time. They're just like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
I'm gonna move to Lisbon. Like, I'm gonna move to Mexico City, and just like
Hmm.
they're just doing their thing. So I think it's mostly a product of the people I spend time with.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah.
personally I've changed like that as well, but I just want to hear from your perspective. But I think I have
Yeah, yeah.
similar experience. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I think it's one of those things, like, I don't think it just changes by itself, unless you have, like, I don't know, like, someone in your life die or something. I think, like, yeah, if your life's just going on as normal, it's very hard for those mental changes to happen, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah.
Or heart pivot. Anything you gave up doing?
Yeah, there's a shit ton of stuff I've given up doing over the years. Um, Probably a lot of them are just hobbies. Like, I think I switch hobbies every 2 3 years. Like, I don't play Go anymore. Um, there was not a moment where I gave it up. It's just kind of like one of those things just fizzles out. Like, again, I think I'm very whatever I give up or take on is very dependent on like the friends I hang out with. So like graduated high school, stopped hanging out with like the Go friends as much. I think I just slowly stopped playing Go and started picking up dance instead. Um, did a bunch of dancing, was on a dance team until COVID hit, and then most of my dance friends, like I kind of just stopped hanging out with, and started hanging out with more like rock climbing friends at the time, just through happenstance, and so started taking up rock climbing more and giving up on dance per se. Again, it was like just things that kind of fizzle out. Maybe one day I find a new group of friends and stop rock climbing. That's possible too. I feel
Hmm.
like that cycle just continues and continues. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of things just like fizzle out because I'm like, oh yeah, there's always something exciting and new to try.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like
Oh.
I think for a lot of these things, like it takes a lot to keep wanting to pursue something that you've already done for 3 to 4 years or more.
Mm.
Um, some people I think are good at pursuing past like I think for every activity there's like or like work or activity, whatever it is, there's like barriers at like the 1 month mark, the 5 month mark, the 1 year mark, and then like the 3 year
Hmm.
mark, and then maybe like 5 or 10 years or something. I think for most things, once I hit the 3 year mark, I'm like, okay, that was enough dabbling. Let me go try
Mm.
something else before I commit to something
Interesting.
serious.
Mm.
Yeah. Wait, is there anything that you've been doing for more than 3 years as a hobby?
I mean, as a hobby or career, or relationship, even, I don't think so. No.
Wow. What's that
Crypto's,
magic three number?
yeah, yeah. Crypto's the only thing where I think we've hit 3 years now, like 2020,
Oh.
2020 to now. Yeah, crypto's at 3 years. That's the
Oh
only thing
wow.
so far where I'm like, Yeah, we're crossing the threshold. But I've
Mm-hmm.
also done different things within crypto, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it really counts.
Mm.
Mm.
But yeah, hobbies, relationships, anything else have not crossed the 3 year mark. So
Wow, wow, interesting. I think I also used to have this 3-year thing, but I don't know, just unconsciously it just passed. So
yeah, I don't know. I know it's one of those things where like I don't think about it too much because I'm like at some point like
yeah.
I'll have a hobby I like enough that I stick with it
Mm.
more. At some point I'll have a relationship that I like
Yeah.
enough that I'll stick with it more. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like something I can just change. So
Mm.
Wow. That how
It's
how
it's
how do you
interesting because
adjust your
like
oh,
when I
sure.
was thinking to ask you this question, I was maybe part like when I think about the word like gave up, I was more thinking about like, oh, like there's only 24 hours and 7 days in a week. And then like there's things that I want to do, but there's like too many things I want to do. So I would like have to consciously make a choice on like what not to do. But it's like
ah
very interesting how we took this direction of like, oh, like it feels like you kind of just like do whatever you want to do, like kind of like the young Andrew always like is present there.
yeah, yeah.
And then you just go execute and do it. You don't really like think too much about like what else do I have to sacrifice to do what I want to do. You just do it. Like it doesn't really come across that you think about giving up. It's more like I would just
Mm.
pursue the next thing I want to do.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this sounds bad, but like I have no problem giving up sleep or like time with friends to go do what I want. And like my friends know
Mm.
this. Of like, oh yeah, there's like I think a lot of my friends are angry at me for like only hanging out with them once every like 5 or 6 months even though they live in the
What?
city.
What?
Look,
That's a
there's
long time.
I have good reason for it. Time just passes. And every other weekend I'm like, "Oh, I have this other thing I want to do or I'm working on this or I'm working on that." Um
Mm.
and obviously I find taking away time from sleep. So, like because I give
Not
myself
obvious. You
so
get
much
Alzheimer's if you like don't sleep or something.
that's, that's a future me problem. Um but yeah, I think it's like I optimize for having enough alone time so that if there's something I really want to do, I'm just gonna go do it. And like
Mm.
the friends I still have around me are the ones who are okay with that.
Mm.
So, or the ones I have around me are the ones who also do that. So like they are also busy for like the most part. So
That's a self-selection process.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
yeah. Sorry, friends.
Maybe this is like a good part into transition into like part two. Well,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to ask how are you different at work and outside of work? But I think we sort of get into it a bit, but I want to hear more.
Hmm. How am I different at work versus outside of work? I mean, when I'm at work, I typically keep my personal life completely out of it. I would
Hmm.
say most people at work probably don't know close to anything about my personal life. With Jackie now being an exception.
but I didn't
Jack,
know you from work. I like
fair.
knew
Yeah,
you
that's
before
fair.
work.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
already crossed the friend barrier before work. But yeah, most people at
Oh.
work I keep like a pretty high wall of like, yeah, I'm not gonna talk to you about my personal life. Like we're at work to
Mm.
get some shit done. I have no problem being an ass or like being difficult to get something done. Like it's not that I don't treat them as friends, but I treat it as like we're here to work towards something. Let's get that done.
Mm.
I'm not gonna
Mm.
go and tiptoe around all the relationship stuff the way I might if we were friends. Um, versus if we're friends, I'm like, I don't think I really have a philosophy for it besides like I care about what you care about to the extent that we could make our needs meet. And
Yeah.
like, hopefully, you're spending your life doing interesting things and you're not just going and doing the same thing every weekend. Um, but yeah.
But how does that like play into the support system then? Like focusing on like the relationship part, because I feel like we were kind of mentioning about you might be really focused on your alone time, but like
Yep.
at the same time, okay, this may be me. I just feel like as human beings, you like need a support system with like people,
Sure.
and then
Yeah.
you're also really into
Mm-hmm.
community. So it's like feel like I'm missing some like bridges and dots connecting, like about how do you? 'Cause it feels like you very much care about being connected with people, having relationship, having that connection, but then you're like
Yep.
also vocally saying, "Hey, like I'm gonna prioritize some other stuff over that." So like,
Yeah. Um, let's see. How do I put this? I kind of just like try and make it so I don't need support that often. That probably
mm.
doesn't really make sense, but it's like there's periods of time where I'm just doing shit, and then there's
Uh-huh.
periods
Mm.
of time where I can deal with life. So like most of the time I'll go like 3, 4 months in a row of just like, all right, I just need to get shit done.
Mm.
And then like in May, I'll deal with like catching up with all my friends, processing like any good or bad things that happen to me. And like kind of going through the motions there. But I'm
Oh,
like, for the most
yeah.
part, if something comes up,
Jackie is like,
Like, I
oh
need to
yeah.
process this right now.
No, I think there's a lot of things where I just like put it on the back burner of like, this was stressful, but I'm gonna process this in like 2 or 3 months. I don't have the energy or
wow.
time to process it now.
Our face
Um,
listening to this timeline.
I think I've well, it's kind of like delayed repression. No, repression, delay, something like that. It's like I think I
Gratification. Oh, the other side of that. Yeah.
oh yeah, like I think I got good at like if there's a stressful event, I will just repress it until I feel like I have the capacity to deal
Mm.
with it. Um, so because of that, it's easier for me to like just compartmentalize things. Like right now, for example, I'm like, all right, I'm probably just gonna be like grinding until like November, maybe mid-November, and then maybe mid-November I'll like go seek out a bunch of friends, like process a bunch of other things. Um,
Mm. Wow.
yeah,
In
so
that
that's
sense,
yeah.
yeah. In that sense, do you think you're more of a multitasker, or maybe you can only just focus on one thing at a time? Just based on what you were talking about, it
Mm.
sounds like you're not. But then also looking at how you work, you seem to be able to multitask as well. So I'm very yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm either processing or executing. So like
Mm,
if I'm thinking about life and dealing with things, I'm not able to do much at work. And I think like Jackie's maybe seen this at some points. Yeah, I don't know if it's super obvious. But there's definitely some weeks where I'm just like basically not doing anything at all because I'm like I'm maxed out. I'm tired. Jackie shaking her head. There are some weeks where I max out and I'm like, all right, I need 2 weeks to basically just like do nothing and like process and deal with life. Um, and at that time, I will process and deal with many things. And then after I'm done processing it, if I'm executing, then I can execute many things at once. But like I can't execute and process at the same time. That's very hard for me to do. Like that's a
Mm.
like I know people talk about context switching a lot. Like I can context switch between writing like 3 articles and writing 10 queries and whatnot perfectly fine. Like that doesn't bother me at all. But if I have to context switch between like thinking about like when I want to move out of New York and then also doing some work stuff, I'm like, no, that's not. I can't do that. The context
Mm.
switch there is too big.
So is it fair to say it sounds like you're just a single core switching, but then when it's too far to switch, you can't switch. So like
Yeah,
you can
if
stick
it's
within.
yeah, if it's too far, I can't. Yeah.
I want to also ask about the execution. We were talking about executing versus processing, but like something I feel like I hear a lot about is like ideating or maybe strategizing versus like executing, and like
Mm.
what like in terms of how you approach life and how you approach career. Like how do you, I guess, what's your mental model between the two? Like should you prioritize one? Like should you get good at one, or should you like be good at both?
My
Or is it
advice
possible?
is my advice is that you need to figure out what helps you ideate. So what do I mean by that? I ideate by talking with people. So there are certain people who I know like are always floating around with ideas, and if I talk to them too much, I'm always going to be distracted by new ideas. So but I'll seek them out when I'm like, all right, like who's an example of this? Trying to think. I mean, like Michael's a good example of this. Chushin's coworker, where I'm like, if I talk to him every other day, I'm probably gonna get super distracted because like he has a ton of great ideas. But if I talk to him like maybe once a month or two, that's like a good enough cadence for me to be like, okay, it's nice to be reminded of these ideas existing. Let me see if it ties into anything I want to do now. So I think I have a bunch of people like that where it's like, okay, um, I mean, even you two, I'm like, yeah, like there are times where I'm like, all right, let me let me go check out, like, catch up with Jackie or catch up with Shusha, and be like, what's on their minds, and that will help me ideate a lot, depending on like what are the things I want to execute on, if that makes sense. Um, so it's very much like I can just go and call one of you and have a conversation and know that I will have an idea that comes out of
Mhm.
it to go do. I mean, obviously Jackie gets this the most because we work together. Of like, I think there's plenty of times where we have a call, we're kind of like, oh yeah, like 12 days to do, and let's just do this. And then very quickly, I'm like, all right, next day, I'm like, here, Jackie, here's our course outline. Here's what we're doing. We're starting tomorrow. you know.
Yeah.
So then I don't feel like I have to take the time to
Yeah.
ideate because I can just rely on others to an extent,
Mm.
and that works extremely well for me.
Mm.
Yeah. I like that. Andrew, what do you think is your superpower?
Is my superpower?
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. I don't think it's a superpower, but like making sure not to completely drop something. So like I think there's plenty of ideas that like I push very, very slowly. Like whether it's an
Mm.
article, whether it's collaborating with someone, whether it's like something in a hobby, like
Mm-hmm.
I might delay it for like a couple weeks or even months, but I'll always try to do like a small step towards it so that I'm not
Mm.
completely stopping it. Like there's been some tasks on my to-do list that like I delay, like I'm like postpone 1 week, and I've probably postponed it for like 10 weeks at this point, but like I'm still thinking about getting it done. Um
Mm.
and I think that's helps me a lot in terms of like ultimately then I end up shipping a ton more stuff than
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of other people, because these things are always just slowly being pushed and not being dropped
So you do have a master list that you like update and then you
to an
would
extent.
like
Yeah.
to? Okay, okay. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So like there's always like 10 or 20 things kind of slowly moving.
And how do you
Right.
like separate, I
Prioritize.
guess, like no, not even that, like compartmentalize
Mm-hmm.
things. Like I have I have like 10 to-do lists. Like I'll tell you guys, and they're just like everywhere. And like I have random idea when
Mm.
I'm
Oh
brushing
wow.
my teeth, and then I just add
Yeah.
to it. So for me, it's more like being more realistic about like what I can get done. But like if you only have like one list, like how do you know when you add to this list? Because you just might have the most random idea, and then like if you have like 20 things, then like yeah, I guess I'm just like trying to see like how do you put them in different parts, and like how do you know like what makes to the list where this
Ah,
doesn't
I
make to the
see.
list.
Okay, maybe that's more the superpower than not dropping things. I think I have a good intuition towards what is doable and what's not doable.
Mm.
So if anything fully falls into the realm of this is too aspirational or this does not have impact, um,
Impact. Okay.
then I will just not add it to the list, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
like even if I do start something, like okay, put differently, there might be something I really want to do and I will just postpone it, and as I postpone it, I'll keep scoping it down until it feels like piecemeal enough to do.
Mm.
Um like I think that's a lot of educational stuff, is like for example right now it's like I'm working on this like OpenSea dashboard, and I'm like, all right, I want to do some big educational OpenSea thing. I'm slowly pushing it back and reducing the scope until it feels like I can probably get this meaningfully done in one day
Mm.
kind of thing. So like if there's like one is like having a high threshold for what gets added, and two is like if something continuously gets delayed, just scope down until like one day you'll wake up and be like, ah, this item that's been sitting here for 7 weeks, it's been
Mm-hmm.
scoped down enough that it's doable today. And
Mm-hmm.
then once I get like the majority of it done, it's easy to like wrap it up and push it
Mm-hmm.
along.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't actually thought about that.
Yeah, it's
Me
actually
Huh.
related to like
neither.
execution ideation. It all comes together. You go
Yeah.
ideate with some people and like you execute, but to execute, like your superpower can be context switching or execution or like scoping, like one of those. But it's this process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a like I will very very rarely scope up on anything. Whether it's work or personal life, like if there's something I think is going to take effort, I'm like scope it down. Just scope it. Scope it down.
Personal life scope it down.
I will. Otherwise, things just feel unmanageable. Like even like me getting my visa to go to China, like took me like 3 months
Oh,
to motivate myself to deal with the embassy and whatnot, and like scope it down
wow.
until I was like, okay, like let me not think about like all the other steps that come after. Let me just scope it down. Just like, all right, this month I get the visa. That's it. Next month I'll figure out tickets and whatnot. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Little
Interesting.
achievable goals.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes life less
Wow.
stressful.
It is. It is. Um, Also, I have a question. How do you stay up to date about things, especially in crypto, when one day
Oh,
feels like 1 year?
that's
Scope
easy.
it down. Scope it
That's
down.
yeah. That's well, yeah. Keeping up to date is just a matter of being on Twitter and like DMing the right people to schedule calls. Like I probably have 4 to 5 calls a week with random people off of Twitter that I think have posted something interesting or reached out to me. I think that's like that 3 to 4 or 5 calls a week is basically like mandatory for me to keep up with like one, what's going on
Mm,
in the space, like narrative wise, and two, like what are people actually building? Because a lot of what people say is happening is just fluff.
mm.
So that's an easy one for me.
It's a hard one to copy paste though. It's like to build a system again, like a
Oh yes,
process of like
yeah, that
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, that's it's tiring at first to constantly be like, oh, I've got these 5 random conversations coming up a week, and like there's plenty of times I
Mm-hmm.
show up to a call, I'm like, well, I don't remember the context for this call.
Right.
But again, I think it's just something you get used to, and it almost always is like helpful. And you'll
Right.
find a lot of things just like, oh wow, this is insanely good timing that we had this
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
mm,
So
Mm. So this does sound like you have a sort of a routine or maybe like a weekly thing that you sort of keep up with. Is that right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just I think it's just a habit of like if I see someone post something really interesting, like just DM them, ask them, like I'll send them my calendar, like, hey, you want to chat about this?
so zooming out a little bit, like a bit meta question, like what is the goal of life? What is success to you?
Ah, what is success? Goal of okay, wow.
6 month goal of life.
6 month goal. Yeah,
No, no, no.
I I have like a default answer. I think I always give for this, which is
Mm,
the only goal is to write 2 books. One is a book about some domain I'm an expert in, and one is a book about like just like life lessons and whatnot. If I write
mhm.
those 2 books, then I'm happy. The rest doesn't really matter.
Mm.
But you can read those like today.
I could, yeah, but I haven't.
And also it like sounds very like it's weird to say this because I feel like writing a book is like such a traditional thing, if that makes sense, because it's been around for
Yep.
like so many years. It's
Yeah.
like you just like your life goal is like write 2 books. That's actually quite
Wow.
surprising, I think.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
I
guess,
think yeah. A lot of people I think are surprised when I say it, but I'm like, yeah, that's I've been saying that since like high school. So
mm,
that hasn't changed.
Hmm. And then so like success is like when you can write these 2 books well, or like
Yeah, I think so. Oh, do we lose Jackie?
maybe.
Oh,
I
she's
can
back.
still hear you guys. Yeah, like
Okay,
I think it's like in and out on our computer local, but it should upload.
but it's fine. Yeah,
Yeah, it's good,
yeah.
it's
I will continue.
good.
um, wait, what did you ask?
I
Sorry.
asked like what's success? Like is success writing these two books really well, or like what is
Uh,
a successful life?
I think writing like success is just once those books are written. That's it.
No
That's
views, no distribution plan.
Nope. I think
No.
by the time I write those, I'm sure the rest of my life will be set enough that like I'll be happy.
Mm,
Um, yeah, I don't know. There's no like I don't really like even if I start a company or whatnot, I'm not gonna say like success in life is taking the company to IPO or whatnot. Like
Mhm.
I'm not that kind of person. Um, and it's just easier for me to be like, look, life is about writing two books, and only thing important is doing things worth putting in those two books. So
Mm, I like
that's
that.
it.
I like it. I like it.
I
It's very simple.
like it.
It makes it so I don't have to think about everything else.
Where can people learn more about you, Andrew?
I don't know where they can learn more about me as a person, but if they want to learn about what I do, just
You
follow
still
me
have to
on
tell
Twitter.
them what you do if they don't
Oh
know.
yeah, that's okay. People don't have to know. It's basically what people have heard of. Like, I'm a teacher, basically, who sells a SaaS product. Sadly, but yeah, you can follow me on Twitter, Andrew Hong 5297. If you're coming for the life lessons content, you're gonna get none of that there, but maybe you'll learn some fun data stuff.
Love that. And
Um,
Jackie.
what do you want to learn from our listeners? How can our listeners help you or get
Oh
you?
yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting to hear how things resonate with people. Like I think as we've talked through things here, um, like it's just fun to see what things people latch onto, and then if someone finds something interesting and has questions and wants to reach out, you can reach out to me on Twitter, and I am always happy to just chat. Um,
Make it into
other
the 4 to 5 calls every week.
yeah, exactly, yeah. The 45 calls did not have to all be crypto related. Um,
Yeah.
I think yeah, I mean it's always just fun to chat with people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think, yeah, this is also how our relationship started, right? Like
Yeah,
one
exactly.
call on the weekend.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Online
That's very
friends.
true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for
Yeah, thank
listening
you both.
today.
It was fun.
Yay.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Journey of the Unordinary. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you are listening right now. Also, if you know someone who might enjoy the podcast, please share it. If you like our conversation, please help rate it and give us a review so others can discover the podcast and join us on the same adventures.
Join us next time as we carry out intimate conversations with our unordinary guests to discover their journeys to where they are today. See you next week!